Welcome to Transform, Ignite, Disrupt, bringing you interviews and insights covering proven practical strategies to unlock your company's innovation potential. Here's your host, Stephen L. Blue.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Transform, Ignite, and Disrupt. This is the place where you hear all kinds of cool people that I know and some that I haven't known before the podcast that have transformed their industries, ignited innovation, and disrupted their marketplace. And we've just had a string of cool people here in the last several months, and we got more to come. But every now and again, something really stupid happens in the world that I want to talk about before I get to my guest. And that is, if you haven't seen it, United Airlines came up with this, and they're always good for coming up with really super stupid things. They came up with this lottery system for their incentives. The CEO sent a letter out to all 80,000 employees or an email and said, oh, man, I got this great plan. You're going to love it. It's an exciting new thing. Instead of the quarterly bonuses based on performance, we're going to eliminate that, and you'll get a bonus or not based on your name that gets put into a lottery. I mean, how stupid is that? Now, United is good for most stupid things, and I thought I heard the dumbest thing on the planet until I heard this. And imagine that, telling your employees and expecting excellence and expecting high performance when it's the luck of the draw. I can't imagine how any idiot could come to that conclusion. So you might want to check it out if you're interested. It's all over the Twitterverse, and it's probably on, I saw it on Inc. this morning. And I'm sure that will turn out really well for United Airlines. And as bad as they are now, they're probably going to get worse because of this. But anyway, today I'm really excited to have a guy on the program that I've known for, I suppose 30 years. And he and I we're kind of an odd pairing. I mean, when I first met him, he was a car guy and I was a railroad guy. And how that happens, how people from the two diverse industries get together is an unusual situation. But I recruited him into the rail industry, and he was in my fold and in my organization for a while, maybe a year or two that I left. And then he totally transformed the rail industry using his knowledge and skills and ability to just really blaze new paths, new technology, new innovation, and he just transformed the whole industry with his company. And then he went on after that to form his own company, which is called ipPrimeMover, and he's helped my company and a bunch of others and becoming innovative and creative and so forth. So what he has to say today, I think you're really going to like it. His name is Joe Denny, and he is the CEO and founder of ipPrimeMover. Welcome to the show, Joe.
Thanks, Steve. How are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
Fantastic. Beautiful Monday morning here in Rochester, New York.
Yeah, about that. Well, listen, why don't we get right into it here? And I did only a thumbnail sketch of your background and probably didn't do it justice. Why don't you tell the listeners what you've been doing, how you got started, and what you're up to now?
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, I don't consider myself a car guy so much, although I did recently buy a nice BMW, which I do enjoy as driving a car. But before that, I never really cared too much about cars. They were just transportation in my mind. I started out in the of Hughes Aircraft when it was around back in the 80s and 90s out in Los Angeles. And that's where I actually picked up a lot of my entrepreneurial bent, if you will, working at Hughes Aircraft, just a model of a company in terms of innovation and really predictable innovation. They were incredible at bringing their people together and creating teams of entrepreneurs that would just drive solutions to really advanced problems. Then I got transferred into the auto industry because we came up with something really cool called collision avoidance systems. And that was for cars. And they put me out at Delco Electronics in beautiful Kokomo, Indiana, and I was there for several years trying to bring radar-based automotive collision avoidance systems into the industry. And I came to see you, Steve, or I came to work for you after that, I think 3 or 4 years at Delco, because I realized that Delco didn't get it. They weren't going to be able to innovate this technology into a production product. And I'm not even sure they today even have a product that meets those needs. There are other car companies out there with it, but I don't see Delco as one of the contributors to that anymore. No surprise. And, I think as we talk today, we'll go through some of those reasons. My company today is ipPrimeMover. IP, intellectual property, as everybody knows. PrimeMover, most people won't know, is a locomotive. So it's really a focused development company, product development company for rail OEMs. And so we try to work with companies like yourself, like Miller Ingenuity, where we will develop products for them. We first start with patent landscape, what's already existing for any kind of idea that the team might be considering, and we look at where the holes are in patents for ideas that seem to have more merit for further justification and further study. Once we understand that, we take off with a product development plan that basically I model after a software development capability called Lean Startup. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with that process, Steve, the Lean Startup.
I am, but why don't you just thumbnail sketch that for the audience?
Sure. So Lean Startup started, I believe, at a Stanford University. I call it the Bible, essentially. Eric Ries is the author, R-I-E-S. And it's essentially a cookbook, and it shows entrepreneurs that have ideas. It also revolves primarily around application and software development. But I've extended it to hardware, mechanical. There's really no science that you can't, match this technique to. Lean Startup has the concept, in my mind, at least from what I understand of it, is it upends the concept of a business plan, raising money, receiving money, and then building your product. And it takes it this way. Build the product first. Well, how do you do that without money? Steve, that's almost impossible for anybody to fathom. Well, at Lean Startup, they solve that problem by saying you don't need to show them a final product, show them a prototype. Well, it costs money to build a prototype. Then show them a drawing. Draw out a concept of what it is you want to develop. Get people's feedback on that concept. And you can't get enough feedback. The key with Lean Startup is to talk to hundreds, if possible, hundreds of people, interview them, show them your idea. Sure, it's not going to be a patented idea. Is there a chance that somebody might steal it from you? Of course. It's possible. Is it likely? No. It's highly unlikely. Anybody's going to take your dumb idea and try to take off with it just because you showed it to them. Now, that's how I've lived my career. I'm pretty open with what I discuss with people because from that, knowledge is generated and people can make better decisions given the information in their hand. If you hold back information, they're not going to see the full picture, and they're not going to give you the honest feedback that you require to take the next step in your development. So the idea with Lean Startup then is take a piece of paper, draw out your idea, sit down in front of an audience, one or two people, how many ever you can see it at any time, get their feedback on it, incorporate the feedback into the drawing, improve the drawing, keep doing that. And how much money have I spent by drawing on a piece of paper? It's pennies because paper's pretty cheap, right? And now I get to the point where people are going, hey, that's a pretty interesting idea. Yeah, I could see buying something like that. Now you know you have a market. Then you might go to the business plan and the funding route. But now you know you have a market and a product that fits that market, and it's been tested. And especially with new ideas, this is probably the most eventful technique that's been introduced in the last 10 years, in my mind. You can now create products on paper and decide, have a laundry list of things that you can now choose from based on market conditions and other timing considerations. When do I want to start investing? When do I want to begin investing in this particular product, and in what order? And then the next step, it's all about continuous innovation. You're always innovating. You're always investing. But you do it at a percentage of your revenue. So it's not anything, your board of directors won't feel the pinch. They'll feel like they're, growing the company, not draining the company. And that's the happy place for the CEO, the company, and the board of directors.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it contrasted to the traditional, conventional approach, which is, spend a shitload of money, take it out there and say, hey, Mr. Customer, you like this, right? And they go, no, I don't like that. And then you're back to square one. And the other, you'll hear this from lawyers, and you know this. The lawyers will say, no. You can't talk about any of this stuff with your customer before you own it, because then they're going to lay claim to it. They'll tell the competition, and all that's bullshit. It's all bullshit.
That's absolutely right, Steve. Do you remember, I don't know if I have time for a quick story.
Oh, sure. Go ahead.
Right. Okay. So I don't know if you remember, but when you hired me, I was brought into General Railway Signal. You were the vice president of North American Railroads operation. And day one, I sat down at my desk, and the marketing manager came over to me and whispered in my ear, whatever you do, don't let them put you on Smart Bolt. What does that mean? He goes, well, it's a product we've been working on and working on, and it's going nowhere, and it'll kill your career here. And the second person to visit me came in with folders and folders and folders on Smart Bolt and said, can you take a look at this? So, perfect example of not using the principles of lean startup. I believe the concept was to hollow out one of the 3 bolts that mounts a wheel to a train axle, a rail car's axle. So this is an axle that obviously has a massive load on it, and the engineers that came up with the concept of Smart Bolt, they wanted to measure the bearing temperature of that particular car's bearing. There's 8 bearings per car in general, and they wanted to measure the bearing temperature in real time, and then alert the locomotive engineer if the bearing temperature started to increase rapidly, meaning there was going to be eventually a burn-off and a derailment. So, the idea was patented before there was a market, which is fine. I mean, that's a good strategy in some cases. And then developed without talking to the market. That's not fine. And I think the company ended up spending over $3 million is the number I heard. Steve, you probably have a better number on it. But just to come up with the new metallurgy that would allow a bolt to retain the same strength with a hollow hole in it.
A bunch of wax in it.
Yeah, with a bunch of wax in it, right? And electronics. That was before they invented, I think the wax was invented, but the electronics were not perfected yet. Anyhow, long story short, I came to you, and I'm sure you wouldn't remember this, but I had a project review meeting with you. And he asked, I understand you take a look at Smart Bolt. What do you think? I go, well, my first question is there any reason it has to be so small? Do we have to fit it in this bolt? And he said, well, no, other than the patent. I go, what if we come up with another patent with a better place to mount it? Yeah, have at it. So you had the right idea. You allowed your engineers to innovate. You had an environment that you created that made people unafraid, even though you were a tough boss, and I think you would admit that.
Probably so.
Yeah, you would expect results, which, wow, what boss, ever expected results? You were a rarity even then, Steve. and people, I won't say people were afraid of you, but people respected that, they better have the answers for you when you came calling. So we made the decision to, shift gears, and we created something that still we weren't using lean startup techniques. The book wasn't written for another 10 years, unfortunately.
Right.
I think we spent another $1 million or so, and we came to the meeting with one of the largest railroads in the world, showed them our device, and they loved it. They absolutely loved it. Well, until a different departmental head walked in. This guy was not in charge of the problem of finding bad bearings on cars. That was a different department. Those are the people that loved their idea. The guy that came in the room, he was in charge of what they called the car mechanical department. And the words out of his mouth, I heard you using a few 4-letter words, so I'll just say it. What he said, there's no fucking way you're putting this bolt on my cars, period. End of story, end of meeting, end of project.
I'll bet. That fast.
That fast. So that's the principle of lean concept is we would have had a drawing to show this guy, and we would have learned that there are detractors, there's supporters, there's coaches, there's all kinds of people out there that will help you or hinder you in getting a new product out to the marketplace. You need to talk to them before you spend any money. That's the bottom line.
That's so true. Well, I don't remember a lot of that, but I do remember when they'd already spent $1 million by the time it got to my desk, and my boss, who was the group president, walked in my office. He said, "You got to make this thing work." I said, "Well, I don't know, man. Everything I'm hearing about this thing is it's dead on arrival. I really don't want to touch this if I don't have to." He said, "You don't understand. The Italians are going to fire me if this thing doesn't work." And implicit in that remark was I was going to get fired if it didn't work too.
Right.
But it's the insanity of large corporations. It's the insanity of large corporations. You've worked for them. They make stupid decisions, and they don't. The boss doesn't want to hear what he doesn't want to hear, and it's all politics, but anyway, they'd only spent $1 million when I left, so I don't know who spent the other $2 million. It wasn't me.
Well, I think it got closed down pretty soon after you left, so maybe I had the wrong numbers, but that's maybe the rumors that were going around at the time, right? I think everybody.
Yeah, who knows? Then you got an opportunity to buy it when you left or something, didn't you? I don't know if you want to talk about that in the podcast or not. You bought something from those guys.
Oh, that's right. You reminded me of that. I forgot all about that. So I started a company in 1999 called Railcom, and Railcom's still in existence today. I exited the business in 2015. The company got started by, we negotiated with the new management team because, as you said, the Italians did fire everybody. And so we had a new management team in place, and they saw no use for this. I think after Smart Bolt, they started naming it Dumb Bolt, and then they basically put it in a bunch of crates and stored it away. And we stored a lot of stuff in there, like test equipment, finished product for other purposes. I mean, it was for the Smart Bolt product, but we thought we could apply it to other things. And when I started Railcom, I negotiated with my direct manager. He was the position you had, Steve, and he was VP of North American Operation. And he was more than willing to let me have it for the low price of $40,000. I even got to pay it $5,000 a month for was it 8 months or whatever it is? No, not even.
That's amazing.
Yeah, 8 months. So that became our initial revenue in Railcom. We started selling the data radios that we developed for the Smart Bolt project. We started selling them for another purpose in the rail industry called code line elimination. Basically, telephone wires were coming down, and we were replacing them with data radio point-to-point communications. And we made a fair amount of money on that, enough to start hiring and developing our product lines. So it was a happy day to get out of that operation after it changed, and then never looked back, right? So Railcom was nothing but an innovation company. Actually, I would say to a fault. We were really focused on engineering and on developing product. We were not as well focused on selling product. We had a ace sales guy that we brought on as part of our management team when we founded the company, and it turned out that fellow was more or less an order taker, less than we needed at that time. We needed somebody who could sell a vision, and so I ended up taking that role on, and company did really well. We ended up selling to a venture capital group and private equity group, and they're running with it now. So happy to see. It's really gratifying to see a company that you kind of created in your mind and turned into a real thing and has a real life. So I'm very proud of that.
Oh, you should be. And that's a perfect.
However,
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say ipPrimeMover. You're going to have to let me know when to stop, Steve, because I'll just keep going, as you know. But ipPrimeMover is my second billing of Railcom. It's a non-competitive situation, of course, but what we're doing is we're starting the company 100% based on lean startup principles. So we're a low capital intensive operation, and we're focusing on the two main drivers for any business, that is product development and sales. So we have our team is a team of executives. They're well versed in high level, high dollar value capital sales, as well as a track history of developing innovative products for the industry. And we are willing to share our capabilities with other OEMs such as yourself, and we're also building our own portfolio so that we, there's value obviously in intellectual property, and that's the concept. We're expecting to keep it a very low employee base, keep it very low overhead, and outsource everything. Manufacturing will be outsourced, development is outsourced, but we lead it all. So it's a nice formula, and so far so good. We're pleased with the results.
Perfect virtual company.
Yeah, almost a virtual company. That's right.
Mm-hmm. And how would people get a hold? How would people get a hold of you guys if they wanted to have you do a little bit of work with them? What's the best way to do it?
Yeah, you could either call me on my cell phone, which I answer directly when you call. It's 585-223-1026, or please visit our website, ipPrimeMover, all one word, ipPrimeMover.com. And that will also have contact information where you can reach us that way as well.
That's great. Well, it's just about time to start wrapping up. If you were advising, you've given a lot of advice already, but if you were going to put a couple of 2 or 3 bullet points together, just here's my best succinct advice to somebody who wants to be more innovative, what would the 2 or 3 things you would advise them to do? Besides call you, of course. That's a given.
That'd be number one, but not being too self-serving here. I think the culture, how do you create a culture of innovation? I know this is your personal focus, Steve. It's one of the things that attracted us to each other probably is that sandbox, knowing there's a place where you can fail safely and win and share in those winnings, right? So how do you create that culture? You pick up a Steve Blue book. He goes into it in infinite detail. These are the concepts I've lived by. I mean, when you work for people, and especially when they're your direct supervisor or your boss, you pick up hopefully good and bad from them, and you learn from that. And that's one of the major points. I think I've told you that personally, Steve, that I picked up from you is that culture and how do you create it. So it can be created. Absolutely. For me, it's been easier because I get to start from ground zero and recruit it in. For others, they inherited something and they've got to figure out how to convert it. And, Steve, you've been very successful in that regard. That's one. And then number 2 is don't spend money unless you're spending it on the right advice, on the right people to do the right thing for your company. You cannot afford to fail after spending X number of dollars because you didn't do the right things first. And there's guides out there. There's other companies like mine that also can help guide entrepreneurs and company leaders into making correct decisions and building their products for their market. It's all about knowing your market better than your competitors, knowing your competitors better than they know themselves, and staying to that, never taking your foot off the pedal, driving that.
Good. That's great. The only thing I would add is pick up that Lean Startup book and read that. I have, and it's pretty informative. So that would be the third thing I would add. And say, well, Joe, it's been great having you here on the show, and I hope people tune in and take your advice and maybe give you a call sometime. So thanks again.
Well, that would be great, Steve. Nice talking to you. We'll talk to you soon, I'm sure.
All right. Have a good day.
Thank you. Same to you.
You've been listening to Transform, Ignite, Disrupt. To learn more about the resources mentioned on today's show or listen to past episodes, visit StephenLBlue.com.